Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Jack Cary, founder of the Paranormal Intelligence Agency.com, and I'm back again today to share with you one of the most amazing and certainly one of the most terrifying cases that I've ever come across, and which I am actively investigating at this time. In the summer of 2016, I was contacted by a private investigator in Muskogee, Oklahoma. This investigator had heard me on one of the programs that I've been on. She heard me mention that I was from Oklahoma, and the subject matter of the show had to do with her case. And that subject matter was dogmen. She contacted me privately and asked if I would be willing to take a look at her case file and possibly consider taking over the case. And I willingly said yes. It sounded very interesting. A few weeks later, I received a 2-inch manila folder full of files. This represented 20 years of investigation that this private investigator had spent investigating what today I consider to be the preeminent case of werewolves and dogmen in America. So, to make a long story short, this private investigator was working on a missing persons case. She had an anonymous contact who told her that they suspected that the missing woman was somehow connected to mysterious events going on in the area, and that stretched back into the 1800s. This case begins in Konawa, Oklahoma, and stretches out to Muskogee, Oklahoma, and Eufaula, Oklahoma. It begins in Konawa with the mysterious death of one of Konawa's citizens, and her name was Catherine Cross. The photograph before you is a town picture of all of the townspeople who lived in Konawa at the time this mystery begins. All of the photographs shown in this video came from the case file and or scenery from the actual towns mentioned in this case. The private investigator named Mary took up the case, and after a few months, she began to receive death threats and a number of eyewitnesses to mysterious events in and around the area, and connected apparently to the headstone of Catherine Cross and perhaps this missing woman. There were a number of eyewitnesses, and those eyewitnesses both drew eyewitness sketches as well, providing their eyewitness testimony to what they had seen in this area. The following are excerpts from the personal communication letter that she sent with her case file. Quote, "Nearly 2 decades ago, if you had asked me if I believe in werewolves, I would have laughed and said no. Creatures changing into wolves on the full of the moon, murdering and maiming their victims by night, old wives' tales, urban legend, and a mixture of Hollywood had set the pattern for our thoughts about the creature known as the werewolf. I guess I will never know the answers to this case. I have run onto many dry areas researching this case. It has taken me over 20 years of looking and searching. I have shed tears over the grave of Catherine. I have sat out in the cemetery and shared stories with her. She had become important to me, and her story needed to be told to the world. I hoped she could find peace in the world and go on to where she needed to be. Local thieves had stolen her headstone throughout the years, but it always manages to go back. Just recently, her headstone had been stolen again. I only pray the thieves bring back her headstone. The family of Catherine's was poor farmers, and it took every cent they had to buy that headstone. This is all that was left to her, and the family moved away, leaving the grave of their daughter and mother behind. The grave of Sarah Cross was the father of J.T. Cross, Catherine's father. She mentions that because of a nearby gravestone. She goes on to say, I quote, "But the question still remains, why did they put on the headstone, murdered by human wolves? What were they telling the people who would visit the grave? Why not loving daughters or in God's hands? Rest well, my love. Anything but murdered by human wolves." After she began her investigation, she began to apparently get the attention of someone in the local community who called her one night. And apparently, this was the same man or group who had been sending her a number of threatening emails. She says, I quote, "I answered the phone and it was a soft male voice, almost timid. He said, 'Stay out of Kanawha. I am tired of you coming into my home. Stay away. I will kill you, and nobody will ever find the body.' He was calm as he threatened me. He then said, 'I know where you work. I know where you live. I will not tell you again. Stay out of my home.' I spoke in a stern voice and asked who this was, and he told me, 'Your worst nightmare, and I am watching you. I will burn you in your home and eat the remains when I am done with you. I will show you I am there. Keep watching your back, dearie. You will pray Satan gets you before I do.' He hung up, and I called the phone operator to try to get a trace on the last phone call made from the phone, but she could not help me without a warrant or trace." The case of Catherine Cross was connected to a court case as well, which is interesting. A doctor in the town was charged with her murder. He was subsequently vindicated and released. There are scant records from that time. It did state that they thought he had performed a surgery on her at some point. And that's about all that there is. Now, a number of witnesses that she had come into contact with told her that there were other headstones which read, "Murdered by human wolves." And she sent me a page in her file. It says, I quote, "I had an interesting visitor from Oklahoma City this week. His name is Herman Kirkwood and a historian extraordinaire. He is a member of Oklahoma Hombres, which works to save the colorful Oklahoma history of the past. He had lots of pics of grave markers of famous desperados, bandits, lawmen, and U.S. Marshals. He had a couple of pics that caught my attention. One of the cemetery in Purcell, Oklahoma, where 2 dogs and a horse are also buried. I never heard of that in a public cemetery. The other was a pic of a grave marker near Kanawha, Oklahoma. The lady died in 1901, and inscribed on her tomb was, 'She was killed by human wolves.' Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what they are talking about. Werewolves." It is quite interesting that not far from Kanawha lies Muskogee, Oklahoma, where in 2006, a family known as the Onway family had an encounter with a dogman or a werewolf on the side of the road. They had to flee the scene, and the son was able to take this photograph out of the back window of the minivan. I mention this because Muskogee, not far from Konawa, has had a number of dogman or werewolf sightings. We're not quite sure which one they are. And when Mary began talking to the people in all of these various towns, very small towns, looking for this woman, asking about the gravestones, she had 3 separate people who had no connection to one another approach her with personal eyewitness testimonies of encounters with what they thought were real werewolves. In one of them, it states, and I quote, "It was in September 2nd of 2001 when I had been contacted by a young man in Thackerville, Oklahoma." Thackerville is yet one of these small towns very close to Konawa. He stated he had seen a creature like a man running on all fours and jumped a tall fence from this position and never uttered a sound. He stated this thing was less than 20 feet from him when he witnessed it. This is Michael Greyhawk's own words as it happened. He did make me a drawing of what he saw. I see it running on all fours, jump over a fence, and ran into the tree line. No noise was heard. Its color was light or white and gray. This was outside Thackerville on a dirt road, August of 2001. He also stated it was near dusk when this thing ran in front of him at a very fast speed and it cleared a 3.5 tall fence while on all fours with no noise heard. I received word that Michael had died at the age of 38 at the end of September. I never did find out the cause of his death. The first eyewitness sketch was from an eyewitness named Carl Spencer, yet another eyewitness. This drawing is from Michael Greyhawk, and then I put them side by side. These 2 witnesses did not know each other, nor did they know of each other's encounter. Their drawings are almost identical. However, in Michael Greyhawk's drawing, he included quite a bit more detail in his written description. There was yet another werewolf encounter, this time in another small town known as Eufaula, Oklahoma. And this was the eyewitness sketch that was drawn. And the eyewitness states, "It was February 19th, 3:45 a.m. I had just entered the small town of Eufaula. My job was to fill the paper machines with the latest editions and to throw out the old papers. It was a job I had enjoyed through the years. The early morning drive was always pleasant, and I had nobody to slow me down, and I enjoyed the early morning hours. This morning was no different, and as I entered the small rural town, I was at my last box to fill and noticed a slender woman standing on the sidewalk near the newspaper box. As I pulled up my truck, as I pulled up, my truck was turned sideways to her. She was standing on the other side of the box, and I could tell she had an old gray and white checked dress, and that she had a scarf on her head. I did note that she didn't have a coat. It was cold out, and I wondered if she was waiting for a ride or was in trouble of some sort. I spoke to her and said good morning, and she never responded back to me. She kept her back turned, and in my mind I thought, when I get done loading this box, I will see if she needs any help or if she needs a ride. As I proceeded to take my papers out of the back to load the box, I stood up, and when I did, I was scared beyond any horror I could imagine. The person had now turned around, and before me stood a creature. It had fur on the face and had human features, and yet it was an animal like I have never seen. It had eyes that glared at me. They were almost reddish orange in color. The teeth were like a dog's fangs. Mouth gnarled back, drool was hanging from the mouth. The ears were sharp, pointed with tufts of hair. The color, I remember, was brown with silver fur. I couldn't see her legs as the truck was still between us. Her eyes never left me. I ran and jumped in the truck. I sped out of there, leaving the bundle of papers laying on the parking lot. I remember her hands or claws held in front of her, fingers elongated, fur poking out from the sleeves. I have never been so terrified in my life. I am a Christian man of good faith, and I have always thought I had a level head. This was some form of demon from hell. I will never go back to this town, be it dusk or dawn. I don't care if they fire me. I can never, ever see this creature again. I don't remember it chasing or coming after me. I only remember the eyes and how this thing glared at me. I don't know what it was I saw. This was no mask or makeup like any I had ever seen. This thing was real. I have to I have told only people of my encounter and wish to remain anonymous. I fear the ridicule my family and I would receive from the community. And here is yet the same photograph. So what we have are a number of headstones, not just Catherine crosses, but 3 or 4 in the case file, stating either killed by human wolves or murdered by human wolves, and on one of them it stated eaten by human wolves. We have eyewitness encounters in the present day of what appears to be human wolves or werewolves. And we have also a very interesting account from the journalist who broke the modern dogman story, The Beast of Bray Road. She recounts in her fantastic book, Tales of Real Wolfmen, on page 160, that there were 2 separate ladies who had contacted her, both from Muskogee, both reporting a run-in with a werewolf-like creature in the countryside. That author's name was Linda Godfrey, and I've actually been on a show with Linda before. Fascinating that she also had 2 eyewitnesses from the same area. So what we have here, guys, is an amazing dogman mystery, werewolf mystery. We don't know which. It goes back into the 1800s and continues to this day. As I stated, I'm from Oklahoma. This is my backyard, and I consider this case to be my number 1 primary active case, and I assume it will probably go on the rest of my life, the way it did with Mary Franklin, who simply grew too old to keep pursuing the case. She needed to retire. She's now passed away, and I am left with her case file. I'm left with her eyewitness testimonies and her photographs, and I'm left with the curiosity of a kid who grew up in Oklahoma, fascinated with tales of Sasquatch and the paranormal. And this case not only haunts me, but it terrifies me. And I believe, truly believe, that in the area of south central Oklahoma, near Kanawha, Oklahoma, near Muskogee, Oklahoma, and stretching to Eufaula Lake, Oklahoma, a 106,000 acre lake, lies a dark and terrifying mystery. We do not know how many victims there were from the 1800s, and truly we do not know if any of the missing people in the area are somehow connected to all of this. But one thing is for sure, when you're there and you're on the ground in these areas where these occurrences happened, you think to yourself, this is the place. This is the place where werewolves or dogmen could roam. this is the place where they could take their victims. And this is the place where this dark mystery will continue.
You have been watching a show on the CPI-ParaWorld YouTube channel. If you like our programming, please help us to keep bringing it to you by liking and subscribing, and it's free. Thank you.